Welcome to Monday's Leftovers, where we break bread over Sunday soul food. First and foremost, per usual, I just want to express deep gratitude for you pulling up yet another seat at the dining room table with me as we go ahead and turn these sermon notes into spiritual nourishment. Pastor on yesterday delivered a mighty, and I do mean a mighty word from Second Kings chapter 7, verses 1 through 8. Second Kings chapter 7 verses 1 through 8. Remember, we teach a man to fish. So you're going to go back later and you're going to read chapter 7 on your own. Right now, I'm going to dissect some bits and pieces. But Pastor goes on and he titles this message, We Outside. And we outside for many reasons. We outside because the lepers was outside the city gates in the beginning when they decided to move in faith. And we outside because at the end of this chapter, the lepers are outside of the king's palace delivering the good news. So we outside. There's also another theme that fits here, which is being covered. And shameless plug for my book, but check out Low Key Covered on Amazon. Black and white book, yellow writing. Again, that is Low Key Covered. And so, anyway, back to the text. The first key takeaway that I have is that a scared mindset will set limits on what you can do. And I'm going to use the messenger version just because it makes it very plain. But chapter or verse 2 of the messenger version says that the officer responds by saying, "You expect us to believe that? Trapdoors opening in the sky and food tumbling out?" He is delusional about the mightiness and the miraculousness of our God. And so as a result, his assignment was diverted to another vessel. That vessel, them four lepers that was outside. And so the next kingdom key that I wrote down was that the mindset causes people to be afflicted with anxiety. Before I even dive in, Hebrews 11:29 orders us that our faith is in our feet and it's not in our feeling. God, in all of his greatness, already knows that we'll be challenged by our flesh. He already knows that in our humanness we will be human, which is why he leaves us this will to live by, that in spite of what we can see, in spite of what it is that we're going through, in spite of what we have went through, we are to trust him. We are to step out in faith. We are to believe that he is bigger than even our biggest obstacle in life, because we are covered. Which brings me into the lepers again, which says Pastor went on to say that God initiates a radical reversal. So that's him using another vessel because the initial vessel didn't move in obedience. He will use somebody else. Get it together. But he initiates a radical reversal. And so Elisha pretty much is like, you ain't believe, so you didn't receive it. And Matthew assures us or directs us, believe and you will receive. And your belief is in your body movement. Like your belief is not just, I believe, like how are you living to illustrate, like in your works, in your movements, in your mindset, does that illustrate belief? Oh, okay. So then going on, he references how the lepers decide to make a move and they end up with the testimony that we outside. They end up being able to spread the gospel. They end up being able to access this abundance and blessings due to moving in faith. And their faith was, if I stay here where I'm at, I'm going to always get what I got. If I go back to where I've been, I'm going to always get what I got. I'm going to take this risk. I'm going to step out on faith. I'm going to trust that God got us on the other side. And on the other side, God had them like he always do. But which leads me into another kingdom key, which Pastor goes on to say that if you live in a comfort zone, there is no faith. And without faith, it is impossible to please God. Faith is in our feet. It is in the things that you do that is outside of your comfort zone. It is the things that you do to step into the unknown, to step into obedience. God told me to move, or making this step would be for the greater good. Making this step, doing this thing spreads his gospel, shows his love within me, right? When they see me, they will see me as necessary because they see the God in me, right? So it's about how you're taking the steps in that way, in order to have faithful feet. Shout out Armor of God. Continuing on, he goes on to pretty much just say how Black people always use adversity to birth creativity. And so like the lepers who were judged for the way that their skin looked, they used their adversity to birth their creativity. In the same way that I use the trauma and the brokenness and the hardships that I went through in order to birth my book, in hopes that not only will it provide a sense of relatability for the people who have been through things similar to what I've been through, but also and primarily so that people are able to see how God showed up in the midst of everything that I went through, and how even in the moments where I was unable to see him, that he never left my side, that he was always there, and that everything that I went through worked out in order to get me where I am today. But God, thank God. But then just continuing on. So in the text, now the lepers stepped out on faith. As a result, they have access to this abundance of blessings. Immediately, it's like hitting the lottery. You know, I'm going to get my car. I'm going to da da da. I'm going to get a new house. I'm about to buy me some clothes. Da da da. All of these things to where the blessing flowed to you, and then it stopped. But we are designed for the blessings to flow through us. God tells us to be fruitful and multiply, and that's not just in biological birthing, but that's also being fruitful in spirit, the fruit of the spirit, being fruitful in how we show up, and multiplying is the growing of his kingdom. So how are we sharing his word, his glory, in order to grow his kingdom, so that at the end of the day there is a magnitude of us that ascend up with him. But continuing on, he just says that the lepers recognize that to hoard their blessings is greed, and it's ungrateful, and it's selfish, and that is not a fruit of the spirit. And so as a result, they decide enough is enough. They are convicted, and they decide to move in conviction, and at that moment they decide that they're going to go and announce this blessing, in essence, to the king. So now this blessing is being positioned to flow through them. And pastor goes on to say, all you have to do is accept the name that you're under, and recognize that under that name there is a promise. All you have to do is recognize that in spite of everything that you are going through, that we are under God's promise. We are under his love, that unconditional love, that no matter what, he got us. We just have to move in alignment with him. We have to step into trust of him, and belief of his abilities, knowing that he is able, of the ablest, in order to get us where he has ordained and ordered for us to be. Wrapping up, he just says, what you sow is also what you reap. And that just ties into the idea that sometimes when we are stepping out on faith and the unknown, there is a fear of, what if it doesn't work out? Well, if you're sowing with the good heart posture, if you're sowing with God in mind, if the idea here is to give God glory, is to grow his kingdom, is to exude love, then recognize that what you give is what you receive. The downside is that we put a clock on God's power and his ordering, right? All of this is already predestined and worked out for us, and we just got to trust that God is always an on-time God. That's not a time on a clock, but that's a time spiritually, to where we are always positioned at the right place at the right time, as long as we are moving in obedience. And if not, you're going to relearn them same lessons over and over and over again. It don't get easier just because you decide not to be obedient. You just got to suffer longer. Get it together. And so he goes on to say that God can use the bad of your enemy in order to give you good, in order to bless you. And I've been there before, where they prayed on my downfall. And in essence, as a result, I could recognize how God showed up in that, and use them in order to bless me. I've been there. And I believe him not because I've been there, but I was there because I believed him for it. I had a year, no lie, I think it was 2011 or 12. I'm off task, but it fits into it. 11 or 12. And when I did my income taxes, I had only made $4,000 that year. My rent every month alone was $700. I had a car note, I had cable, my daughter went to daycare, all of that. And I would not have never known that I only made $4,000 until that moment. But somehow for that entire 12 months, God provided. Now, he could have used multiple vessels or whatever the case may be, but I know that it was nobody but God. So I believe because of my testimony, but I also believe because of the things that I didn't experience. I believe just because spiritually, I have an assurance that God has me. Even before I dived into my Bible, even before I understood this, there was an assurance within me that I knew God had me. Even when I didn't know, I knew. And so what this message is pretty much saying is that like you have to move with just this firm faith that no matter what, God got me. And so once you receive power, your responsibility is to pour back. Once God blesses you, that blessing is to flow through you. You are responsible for blessing others through the blessings that God bestows upon you. And so I think that pretty much wraps us up. But just a couple footnotes that I did take away that I'm gonna add is that not only does the king officer doubt God's power, not only does he the doubts God's creativity, but he also doubts the messenger. So he doubts everything about it is unreal because his mind can't fathom it. And so pulling a snippet from Kirk Franklin where he said we get so focused on our right now that we forget about our tomorrow. And that's not even just the tomorrow that's coming, but the tomorrows in the past that he has already brought us through. So just remembering that it is through testimony, it is through experience, and it is through faith that we step into alignment, that God covers us. You can be the vessels that he uses due to obedience or the void left due to disobedience. And so just closing it up, that's where I'm going to wrap it up at, is that he gave the officer the provision. He didn't receive it. So the vessel used was the lepers. And so you can either decide that you want to be the vessel that God uses, because it's all about a choice. Our free will is not gone. You can decide that you want to be the vessel that God uses due to obedience, or that you're going to be the void left due to disobedience. You decide. It's your choice, because again, you got free will. But we have a responsibility to share the good news through our testimony. And so in that, the lepers, just closing it out, in that the lepers didn't allow that blessing to stop at them. They decided to go to the king's gates in order to share the good news of the blessings that God had bestowed upon them. And so, as I wrap up per usual, I got a song to close us out. And so my song is not going to tie into the We Outside message, because that song choice was very earthly. But the song choice that I decided that I am going to use is going to fit into the covered theme that I gathered, which is... I believe.